Today, like Jason said, I get the honor of wrapping up the series we've been in called Level Up. And Level Up was really a series that was meant to help us set up our lives for this new year. Because nobody wants to be the same person they were the year before, right? We don't want the same struggles, the same problems, the same issues, and carry them into the new year. We want to experience the abundant life that Jesus offers us. So, Jason talked about a lot of different things that we can work on practically to level up our spiritual life, level up our relationships. And so today I'm going to be wrapping that up. By show of hands, how many of you guys use or like the cruise control feature in your car? Yes. Me too. I love the cruise control feature. My husband hates it. Like, I'm literally like, just cruise it, just cruise it, just cruise it. And he's just like speeding and speeding and speeding, okay? He hates it. That's why he gets all the speeding tickets in our family. But I love cruise control. I usually just find the speed limit, set it, maybe 5 over, maybe 10 over. Don't tell Officer Perry. But I just set it and forget it, y'all. I don't have to worry about getting pulled over. I'm not thinking about anything because I know I'm going on speed limit, right? Until then, something happens on the road, like there's construction. And we live in Oklahoma, so there's always construction on the road, right? Or there is like bad weather, or there's a wreck. Then I have to get off of that cruise because I have to pay attention because things are beginning to change. And I think so many of us were living our lives on cruise control. We were just going, not really giving a thought to where we were going, how we were living our lives, who was influencing our life, whose life we were influencing. We were just day in, day out, going. And then 2020 hit. And then 2021 hit. And then 2022 hit. And God is saying, you need to get off of that cruise control. Because things are beginning to change. I need you to pay attention. Things are shifting in the atmosphere. I need you to pay attention. So Pastor Jason taught us about leveling up our daily habits, fighting against temptation, fighting for our joy in the midst of chaos. And last week, Pastor Tom talked about leveling up our prayer life. And you're probably wondering, what else is there left to possibly level up, Simi? Because that was a lot of important things, right? Well, all of those things that we've been studying, from our prayer life to fighting temptations to joy to our prayer life, for us as believers, is done in the context of biblical community, in the relationships we have with the people in our world. So today I'm going to be talking about leveling up our community. And here's the thing. I know we are living in a weird season to be even talking about community. But the pandemic doesn't take away our innate need for people. That's why even when we were isolated, our souls craved intimacy. Why? Because we were created for community. If I was to ask, what do you love doing the most? What are you most grateful for? What annoys you the most? I bet all of your answers had to do with the people in your world, right? Because we make sense of our world and our identity, who we are, through our community, through the people that are in our world. That's also why it's important who you hang out with, right? Who do you surround yourself with? And one of the main impacts that we saw of COVID-19 is an increase in mental health issues. Among all age groups, suicide, anxiety, and depression significantly rose, mostly stemmed from feelings of loneliness because of isolation from community. And the latest research is showing that loneliness is the most common pathology that doctors are seeing in their clinics. And that loneliness is as unhealthy as smoking. A Harvard study done in 2021 asked the question, how many are feeling lonely without any significant relationship with others? Lonely without any significant relationship with others. And in adults, that number was 40%. In young moms, that number jumps to 51%. And in young adults, it was 61%. Another stat says, compared to 2019, in 2021, there was a 51% increase in adolescent girls that were attempting suicide. And the American Academy of Pediatrics say that the mental health of kids in America today is at a level of national emergency because of living through a pandemic with no one to process our pain with. See, we live in the digital age and we feel so connected with people more than ever before. But we lack actual community with real human beings and face-to-face encounters. We just scroll and comment on social media friends' posts, but never take the time to sit across the table and have a heart-to-heart conversation about what we're really going through with a real friend. So we're more lonely than ever before in history. And listen, we don't need statistics to tell us that loneliness is bad, right? In the very beginning, we see how God created the entire universe, and he looks at everything he made and he says, it is good, and then he makes man in his image, and he gives him identity, and he calls him Adam, and then he gives him a purpose, puts him in the garden, and says, take care of the garden. But then he looks at Adam and he says, it is not good that man is alone. Adam had mountains. He had the oceans. He had the beautiful sunset. He had it all, the animals, the birds, but none suitable for him. So God creates Eve, and we see this beautiful picture of perfect community. So not only are we created for community, community was designed by God for us to thrive, to experience abundant life. So today I want to take some time to unpack what biblical community looks like, what it means. And I can't think of a better example than the first church. So we're going to be in Acts chapter 2. I'm going to read from verse 42 through verse 47. It says, they devoted themselves to the apostles' teachings and to fellowship, to the breaking of bread and to prayer. Everyone was filled with awe at the many wonders and signs performed by the apostles. All the believers were together and had everything in common. They sold property and possessions to give to anyone who had need. Every day they continued to meet together in the temple courts. They broke bread in their homes and ate together with glad and sincere hearts, praising God and enjoying the favor of all the people. And the Lord added to their number daily those who were being saved. I saw this quote by Elton Trueblood that summarized the first church so well. He said, the character of the early Christian fellowship, which was amazing to the contemporary Romans, was precisely that there was nothing in their experience that was remotely similar to it. Religion they had in vast quantities, but it was nothing like this. Much of the uniqueness of Christianity and its original emergence consisted of the fact that simple people could be amazingly powerful when they were members one of another. We call this the first church, but what it really is a community of faith, a group of people living out the gospel, the way of Jesus together. And because of the way they lived and loved the people in their world, they begin to revolutionize the world around them. So what about this church? What about this community changed culture? Because that's what we want. That's what we want to see happen in our cities and in our world. So if you're taking notes, one, community is based on shared experience. Community is based on shared experience. When I was in high school, I was part of this club called IPSA. IPSA. It stands for Indian Pakistani Student Association. I don't know if they do stuff like this anymore. It was a long time ago, but it was awesome. I would literally walk into the room and I felt seen because they just got me, right? We got each other. We understood each other. Nobody was asking any questions about anything because we just had similarities, right? So I would walk in and no one was like, hey, why are all the fingers on your right hand tinted yellow? Right? Because they were Indian. They knew all Indian food had turmeric, and we ate with our hands, and turmeric stained our fingernails yellow. Right? They just got it. They weren't asking. I know some of y'all are like, did she say turmeric? Yes. That's for free. It's not turmeric. It's turmeric. You pronounce the R, okay? But we had this connection because we were all having this shared experience of being Indian in America. And we just got each other. This is why groups like AA and various support groups and survivor groups and social clubs and fan clubs work so well. It's a room full of people with different backgrounds brought together by one unifying experience. And we see that in Scripture, that Jesus' community consisted of fishermen, tax collectors, zealots, people that really didn't have much in common, but they had this one shared experience of meeting Jesus and hearing these words, follow me. Only the gospel can take a diverse group of people that don't fit together and make them a part of each other. Because as believers, we have the ultimate shared experience, right? Once we were lost, but now we are found. Once we were not a people, but now we are a people. Once we were in darkness, living for ourselves and the world, enemies with God and slaves to sin. But now we are made new, we are set free, and we have been adopted into the family of God as his children. And Dallas Willard states it this way: the aim of God in history is the creation of an all-inclusive community of loving persons, with himself included in that community as its prime sustainer and most glorious inhabitant. Jesus is the center. He is the glue that holds this biblical community together. So we may look different, we may vote different, but we share something so much deeper than any of those things. Because we're not members of a political party or an organization. We are members of one body. We are members of each other, of the body of Christ. Number 2, community is based on shared mission. Community is based on shared mission. If you know Jason at all, you know that, Jason can talk to anybody and everybody, right? And it's actually one of my favorite things about him, but sometimes I have to tell him to calm down. Like we were out of town last year and there was like a OU game and we were at a restaurant and he had his OU shirt and his OU hat and he saw someone across the room with an OU hat and he looks at that guy and he does that thing that guys do, like that head nod thing. I can't do it. He does that thing and he's like, boomer. And I'm like, dude, we're not in Oklahoma. This is not Norman. What are you doing? Of course, across the room, I hear the word, yes, because y'all are crazy, right? No, because you have a shared mission. We're here to cheer on the same team. I don't know you. I don't know anything about you. We live in different parts of the country. But right now we have a shared mission. For the next hour or however long football games are, because I really don't know. Okay, it seems like it's really long. But we have a shared mission. And that brings us together in community. Brings us together in community. I'm sorry, guys, I lost my place for a second. Okay, so in the first church, we saw how they had these shared mission, right? We had devoting themselves to the apostles' teaching, fellowship, breaking bread, and to prayer. And 2,000 years later, this is still the mission of the church. That's why we began the whole year with what? fasting and praying together as a church. That's why we highlight and we give to an organization together every month. We go and serve the city together. This is how we reach the lost and grow the church. It's not in the production or creating viral sermon clips or the worship songs that we sing. It's when we share mission together in community that the church is going to be attractive to a lost and broken world, just like it was then. In his book, The Gospel, How the Church Portrays the Beauty of Christ, Ray Ortlund says it like this: the beauty of human relationships in the church is itself an argument for the gospel. When the gospel is doubted, a beautiful church that sticks together is an unanswerable argument in our angry and divided world. Amen. One of the comments we hear so much when people first start coming to our church is how there is so much joy and how everybody is so welcoming in this place. And you know why they notice that? Because it's not the normal everywhere. It's not like that everywhere in the world. And I don't know about you, but I feel that every Sunday when I come into this place. And I need it, especially in this season, to keep me going and doing all the things that God has asked me to do. And I know there's also a temptation right now because of everything that's going on to disengage from the community of faith that is the local church. But church isn't simply about listening to a sermon or watching people worship. Church is about gathering together in community to share in our mission so that we can all experience the love and joy in his house. See, the first church was born when people gathered together and the Holy Spirit came down. So I think because of that, they understood the power of community. But listen, the first church wasn't perfect. In fact, if you keep reading Acts, you'll see that they had problems, they had conflicts, they had their own issues. And community is where we get to practice the way of Jesus, where we get to extend grace and mercy, where we call out sin, where we hold people accountable, we edify, we forgive, we empower and equip people. We serve so we can feel a sense of purpose as we use our God-given gifts, because there is work to do. There is work to do. And this is not a solo mission. It is a shared mission. This is why in places in the world where Christianity is illegal and people are being persecuted for converting, that believers will walk miles and miles and miles barefoot to sit in a room with a few other believers. They could just sit home with their Bibles, with their faith all alone. But they risk their lives and their families to gather together with other believers because they understand that this faith is not about personal comfort or convenience. It is about community, that it is not a solo mission, that it is a shared mission. Number 3, community is based on shared stories. Community is based on shared stories. In Acts chapter 2, verse 44, it says they were together and had everything in common. This doesn't mean that they were exactly alike in every way, like clones, or thought the exact same way, like zombies or something, right? It means that they understood that their lives weren't private or personal. They shared of themselves living as an interconnected collective. They needed each other. They looked to each other to depend on each other for little things and big things. They turned to each other. But honestly, when is the last time when we needed something we went and asked our neighbor? My dad is actually really good at this. A couple of years ago, we went to his house and he had his neighbors over for food. And we're like, whoa, what's going on? We didn't even know, right? Because we don't even do that. Who does that? Like, just text. But he had them over, and this is probably the first time these people were eating Indian food, but he was having conversations and making them feel welcome. A couple of weeks ago, his car broke down. He asked his neighbor, and his neighbor helped push his car back to his house. My dad is so good at that, and it comes natural to him because he came from a part of the world and a culture that was similar to the first church, where people saw each other. They watched their families grow up. They were interconnected with the people in their community. But here in our world today, especially now, we have everything, right? In fact, I have everything right here. Amazon, Uber, AAA, DoorDash, validation. Oh, I have Instagram for that. I need to vent. Oh, I got Facebook for that. Right? We have everything. And here's the thing about Western culture that is often deceiving. We focus so much on self-help, and self-discovery. But the truth is, sometimes we need people to help us. We need people in our lives to help us discover who we are, because we all have blind spots when it comes to us. So oftentimes, a friend, a coworker, a community group member can call out my strengths and my struggles more accurately than I can, or even a personality test can. But in today's world of social media, I share what I want to share. So nobody really knows me. And I don't even really know myself, because I'm constantly curating a version of myself that I want the world to see, that will give me likes and follows. Yeah. And 51% of young moms are lonely, and 61% of young adults don't have significant relationships, because we are living lives in silos and not in communities where we are fully known and fully loved. Last year, the end of last year, I had a health scare. And I didn't want to tell anybody about it, because I didn't want to talk about it, because if I talked about it, then it became real. And if it really became real, then I would get emotional and cry, and I didn't want to do that. And I didn't even tell my parents. In fact, the very few people that I told first were some of the women that are sitting in this room today that are in my community group. I wasn't planning on telling them, but that day as we gathered together, I shared my story with them, and they encouraged me, they prayed for me, they checked in on me. And during the scans and all the testing and all that, I was scared. I was nervous, but there was this underlying peace, because I felt held. It is hard to share our stories. It is hard to be vulnerable. Because if you lived enough life, then you know that relationships are complicated and people are messy and they can hurt you. And just because you're in a church doesn't mean that community will be easy or perfect, because we're all still human beings. We just happen to be inside this building, right? And maybe you're here today and you've actually been hurt by a church, and you're carrying that hurt. And if that's you, I want you to hear me say this. I am sorry. I am sorry that someone used God's word to manipulate, to hurt you. That is not God's heart. And I know that makes it really hard to trust and jump into community. But can I ask you to try? Because the enemy wants nothing more than to keep you distant and isolated, showing just a version of you, and just show up on Sunday mornings. But Jesus wants you to feel known and loved in his house. Jesus, we see in his weakest moment in the Garden of Gethsemane, where he's praying and his blood is coming out as sweat. He's about to be arrested and crucified. He looks at his closest disciples, and knowing that they've doubted him, knowing that they said the wrong things at the wrong time, knowing that they're about to leave him, betray him, deny him at his greatest time of need, he invites them into his story and asks, will you pray for me? What a beautiful, powerful picture of vulnerability. What a great example that he sets for us. Because we are not meant to live in isolation, but live in interdependence with each other. Number 4, this is my last point. Community is based on shared love. Community is based on shared love. We read how the first church displayed radical sacrificial love towards each other through generosity and hospitality. They gave of their wealth, their resources, their time, their food. And one of my favorite things that I tell everybody about when I brag on y'all, this is what I tell everybody. You guys love like nobody else I've ever seen. I grew up in the church and I've never been at a church that loves genuinely like you do. No strings attached, no agenda, no ulterior motives. Just you genuinely love each other. There have been so many times where before the pastors get to the hospital to make a visit, there's already community group members there. Before we're trying to set up a meal train through the staff for someone that is sick or have a need, people in our church have already found the need. They've opened the doors. They're making it happen. And I hope we will always be a community based on shared love. Jesus lived out community in this way. We see Zacchaeus, who was hated by his community because of his job as a tax collector. And he's sitting on a tree alone to see Jesus. And Jesus sees Zacchaeus sitting there alone. And he says, I'm coming to your house for dinner. And in that encounter, Zacchaeus' response after meeting with Jesus is, Lord, I'm going to give back everything I stole from this community. The Samaritan woman who was divided from Jesus by gender and race, she was misunderstood and rejected by her own town. She's coming to a well alone. And Jesus is sitting there waiting for this woman. And the longest recorded conversation Jesus has in the Bible is with her. And her response was to go back to her community with the gospel. And we see the demoniac man who lived alone in the tombs, shoved aside as a burden by society. And Jesus goes through a storm to find him, heal him, and restore him back to his own people, his own community. Jesus saw people that nobody else did. He saw their pain, and he always made them feel like they belonged by loving them. And one of the core values, our mission is, as a church, is that we want this to be a place where anyone and everyone can belong because we are a community based on shared love. And you get to be a part of that by inviting people here. Because here's the truth. Every day, you encounter people like Zacchaeus, disconnected with no real friends. Like the Samaritan woman, living with a broken past and covered with shame. Like the demoniac who is rejected and invisible to the world, living with chronic pain and tormenting himself. And notice here that they didn't come looking for Jesus. Jesus saw them. He invited them in. And there are people longing for community in your world, waiting for an invitation. And each of the empty chairs that are in this room today is a space we made for them. And you get to invite them, not to a church building, but to belong to family. To belong to a community of people so they can experience the love of God and the love of a family. Church, we are living in times where we have to fight for community. But here's the thing. There is an enemy who has been fighting to keep you isolated from each other. And we need to know that. That is not just by accident that all these things are happening and everything is calling us to just live in silos. From technology to everything that's happening in the world, keeping us isolated with each other. There is an enemy who wants that. We see that in the garden when sin enters through the deception of the enemy. Not only does mankind lose communion with God, now there is division between Adam and Eve. They're standing there pointing fingers at each other saying, no, it's her fault. No, it's his fault. They're blaming each other. And then as time goes by, they have children. They have Cain and Abel, and there's hostility between them. And Cain kills his own brother, Abel. And then as time goes on and we read the Bible, we see there's more separation, more division, and more hate. People hurting each other. And then Jesus comes to redeem and restore. And in John 17, he's praying his last prayer before he is about to die. And there's 5 verses that he prays for himself. The rest of the chapter, he is praying for us. He is praying for the disciples, and then he prays for the church. He prays for us. That is how important the church is to God. That's how important the church is to the heart of Jesus. That his very last prayer on this earth was for us, for this community of faith. And what does he pray? Father, make them one. Not make them powerful, make them influential, make them generous. No, he says, Father, make them one. Friends, Jesus didn't just die to save us and then leave us. Jesus died to save us, and then he grafted us into his family. So when we confess our sins, we put our faith in him, we are made his. And when we choose to walk in community with our fellow brothers and sisters, we are made one. Born again into a new family, adopted with new brothers and sisters. We are co-laborers, members of the same body and household. This is how Scripture defines our identity in Christ. Nothing about the gospel is individualistic. It is always and all communal. In his book, Life Together, Bonhoeffer says, we don't have to create community. We just have to choose it. Jesus already did the work. We just have to choose it. We just have to step into it. And the enemy will do anything and everything to stop it. So real quick as I end, here are 5 practical ways you can level up community. Number 1, commit to gather every Sunday in 2022. Commit to gather every Sunday in 2022. Why? Because I read somewhere recently that Christians, 86% of Christians in America don't think that they need to go to church. Yet Jesus' last prayer was for us to be one. So we are going to gather together every Sunday in 22. If you're healthy and able, be here in person. If not, then join us online and engage in the chat because we are community. Number 2, say hi and try to meet new people on Sundays. At least one new person. Number 3, join a community group. 4, share a meal with someone and share your story with them. 5, invite someone to church. Not just check out my church, but what about using the words, come sit with me? I'm going to church on Sunday. Come sit with me. Because remember, we're not inviting them to a church building. We're inviting them to belong. We saw in the very beginning this beautiful picture of perfect community in the perfect Garden Eden. And at the very end of the Bible, we see a picture of a perfect community, of every tribe and every race singing and worshiping together. It's a marriage feast with the family of God sitting around a table. And right now, we are here living in the middle, practicing for that day, rehearsing for that day. But here on earth, God's plan for community is the church. It's us. We are the picture of God's design for community so that the world will see Jesus, so that they will believe the gospel. They will want this Jesus. Let's pray together.